there is significant funding by groups and organizations to push that, including Sharia, into the United States.
Oh, there's no doubt whatsoever. Prince Ali bin Talal from Saudi Arabia, who has spent millions and millions of dollars in funding universities.
The goal is for the Western Hemisphere, for the Western civilization, the United States, and Texas as ground zero, to become Islamic.
They're working toward eliminating and destroying Western civilization from within. And all the non-Muslim apologists for Sharia that we see are indications of how successful that effort has been. This is all about political power. Nihad in repeated statements speaking about increasing the number of Muslim Congress.
Did you catch what just happened in that hearing? Because this wasn't subtle. This wasn't coded language. This was a sitting member of Congress saying, flat out, that there's an organized push to expand Islamic political power inside the United States. And yes, that includes Texas. Now, critics are already lining up to scream fear-mongering. They'll say it's dramatic. They'll say it's divisive. But here's the problem. Chip Roy didn't walk into that hearing guessing. He walked in with documents, data, and examples. He put Sharia law front and center and asked a question most politicians are too scared to say out loud. Can a religious legal code that claims authority above man-made law coexist with the U.S. Constitution? We're not talking about freedom of worship. That's protected. We're talking about governance. We're talking about a system that does not recognize we the people as the ultimate authority. A system rooted in religious supremacy over constitutional law. And when Chip Roy starts connecting the dots, foreign funding pipelines, allegations of no-go areas in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, political organizing networks, you start to see why this wasn't just another routine hearing. If you care about the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, equal protection under the law, if you care about whether America remains a constitutional republic, then you need to see what unfolded here. Let's break it all down.
Ms. Shield, let me ask you a quick question, and just try to go through these pretty quickly, right? Just a few things with respect to Texas, my friend Mr. Gill was just talking about. Is it true that Boston, including there's a big center in West Campus, the University of Texas, including other places? In other words, it's not just located just Epic City. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I'm also talked to a number of people, particularly in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, women in particular, who will tell me that there are enclaves and areas throughout the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex where they do not go. Where there are women, Texans, who say that because they are in areas that have a high concentration of Muslim men, and because of the nature of what's going on in those areas, that there are now, quote, no-go zones in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I've heard that from multiple people in multiple places throughout that area, correct?
Correct.
And Mr. Spencer, and I'd look to you on this question here. I heard my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who were raising objection to legislation and a number of bills that some of us introduced, particularly one that I introduced, that was raising the issue of vetting individuals as we're bringing them into the United States for their adherence to Sharia law. That was the idea. The idea is that Sharia law is inconsistent with our values in Western civilization, so we should know if we're bringing people into the country that may want to advance a system of law or systems that are contrary to our laws. Here's my question. In doing so, my colleagues acknowledged and said that would mean that Muslims generally would be in fear of deportation or inability to be brought into the country. Does that not suggest that there's a recognition that Sharia law is central to most of the Muslim population throughout the world and those that come to the United States?
It would seem as if they're aware of that, yes.
And is that true? Is
Yes.
Sharia law central to most Muslims throughout the world?
Absolutely. Sharia is considered divine law, and thus it takes precedence over all other legal systems. In areas of the Muslim world where it is not fully implemented, such as Egypt or Syria, other countries, it still has a tremendous cultural influence, such that elements of it are often enforced by individuals or groups where the government doesn't do so.
And is it not true also that there are some 50 plus countries throughout the world in which Sharia is either entirely the law or central to the law in a mixture of its religious implementation, but also its civil?
Yes, that's right. There are 57 members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, 56 nations, and the Palestinian Authority.
Is it also not true that we're talking about the advance of the Islam population, or the population of Muslims that adhere to Islam in this country, that it is not also true that there is significant funding by groups and organizations to push that, including Sharia, into the United States?
Oh, there's no doubt whatsoever. You have, for example, Prince Ali bin Talal from Saudi Arabia, who has spent millions and millions of dollars in funding universities such as Georgetown, where they have now the Prince Al-Walid Center for Muslim Christian Understanding that is designed essentially to whitewash Islam, jihad, and Sharia and present a version of these things that are designed to foster complacency. And also have the government of Qatar doing the same thing on an even larger.
In addition to these countries, in addition to foreign funding, there are organizations such as CARE and other organizations that are designed to implement and advance the existence of Sharia and the advance of Islamism in the United States. Is that true?
Oh, certainly. Omar Ahmed, the co-founder of CARE, has been on record saying the Quran should be the only law of the land. He has denied saying this, but the original reporter stuck by her story. Ibrahim Hooper of CARE, the famous spokesman for the organization, said that he wanted to see the government of the United States become Islamic sometime in the future. And this is something that is clear from all of CARE's actions.
And would it be safe to say that the goal of those organizations, and the Muslim Brotherhood, as my friend Mr. Gill said, also from Texas, that the goal of those organizations in advancing Islamist movement in the United States, that the goal is for the Western hemisphere, for the Western civilization, the United States, and Texas as ground zero, to become Islamic?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. That's very clear from the explanatory memorandum of the Muslim Brotherhood, saying that the goal is that Allah's religion is victorious over other religions. And they're working toward eliminating and destroying Western civilization from within. And all the non-Muslim apologists for Sharia that we see are indications of how successful that effort has been.
One last question. I'm over my time, then I'll recognize the gentlelady from Wyoming. Is that not inherently political and not just missional? In other words, it's not just saying, hey, we would like people to know Allah and to know the teachings of Muhammad and Islam, as much as a Christian might want to advance the mission of Christ, but that it is political in ideology and in effect.
There's no doubt whatsoever. This is all about political power. Nihad Awad, the executive director of CARE, has made that quite clear in repeated statements speaking about increasing the number of Muslim congressmen, getting Muslim senators, and increasing Muslim political power on that basis.
There's a movement afoot across the United States that seeks to overthrow our legal system and the Constitution to replace it with a foreign legal system that upends our American way of life. It seeks to replace these foundational elements of our constitutional order with Islamic law, known as Sharia. The principles of Sharia are at odds with the Constitution and the laws of the United States. The Sharia fails to include due process, treats non-Muslims as second-class citizens, and prescribes barbaric punishments. All the while, polygamy, misguided corporal punishment for perceived violations of Islam, and acts of violence and terrorism on behalf of Sharia are permitted by its adherents. Sharia encourages violence, silences dissent, rejects religious freedom, and subjugates women and children. Let's be clear. This is not about having the freedom of worshiping a religion of one's choosing, such as Islam, but forcing a foreign legal code that is incompatible with our laws and legal system that provides unwanted consequences to the American people. It's everything we've fought against for more than 250 years. Thomas Jefferson recognized this problem at the beginning of the 19th century when he confronted Islamists in the Barbary Wars to keep trade lanes open and end Islamic religious slavery. When envoys and future presidents John Adams and Thomas Jefferson inquired by what right the Islamic Barbary states preyed upon American shipping, enslaving both crews and passengers, America's two foremost envoys were told by Tripoli's ambassador, quote, "It was written in the Quran that all nations who should, quote, not have acknowledged their authority were sinners, that it was their right and duty to make war upon whoever they could find, and to make slaves of all they could take as prisoners, and that every Muslim who should be slain in battle was sure to go to paradise," end quote. While the rest is history, with American Marines victorious on the shores of Tripoli as their anthem rings, the American people, this Congress, must recognize the same issue our founders identified and defeated over 200 years ago. Islamists are forcing their legal code onto non-believers by violence or the threat of it by any means necessary. The same problem of radical Islam enforcing Sharia has reared its head in the 21st century, this time using different tactics to advance it across the United States. Some of you might think of Sharia as a 2010s buzzword. That is wrong. Over the last few years, efforts to impose Sharia on American communities have taken off, and nowhere more than in my home state of Texas. In 2024, members of a Plano mosque sought to create their own 402-acre Islamic enclave governed by Sharia within the state of Texas. It was called the East Plano Islamic Center, or EPIC. And thankfully, after advocacy by many in Texas, the Texas state government has currently stymied it from advancing.
What Chip Roy just laid out isn't small. It's not symbolic. It's structural. And if he's even partially right, the long-term implications are enormous. Start with a political reality. When Roy raises concerns about increasing Muslim political influence tied to Sharia advocacy, you cannot ignore who already holds office. Look at Ilhan Omar. She's a member of Congress. She's influential, and her critics argue her rhetoric often aligns more with global Islamist narratives than with American constitutional priorities. That debate isn't fringe. It's happening in real time inside the Capitol. Then Roy went historical, and this part matters. He invoked the Barbary Wars and Thomas Jefferson. The author of the Declaration of Independence didn't send the Marines to Tripoli by accident. The early republic confronted ideological conflict with regimes operating under religious legal supremacy. That tension between constitutional governance and theocratic systems isn't new. It's just evolved. Now let's talk substance. Under strict interpretations of Sharia law, equality under the law does not exist the way Americans understand it. Women's legal status is diminished. Religious minorities are subordinated. Criminal punishments are defined by religious doctrine, not constitutional safeguards. That stands in direct contrast to the secular framework our founders built. Roy also pointed to demographic shifts, rapid population growth in certain regions of Texas, the emergence of tightly clustered communities, concerns about enclaves where cultural and legal norms may diverge from broader American standards. Whether you agree with his framing or not, those are the arguments he's putting on the table. Add in the billions of dollars from countries like Qatar and Saudi Arabia flowing into American universities, and Roy's warning becomes about influence, intellectual, cultural, and political. The core question isn't about religion. America protects religion. The core question is governance. Does constitutional law remain supreme, or does any religious code of any kind gain parallel authority? That's the debate. That's why Chip Roy came in hot. So what do you think? Is he sounding a legitimate alarm, or is this just hard-edged politics in an election cycle? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more unfiltered breakdowns like this, make sure you're subscribed.